his We Are. Oh, he's repping the We Are Tottenham shirt. That's why.
He's late, just like the financial results.
No. Let's get something clear here. It was taking too long, so I went and did my energy meter readings. Very pleased with the results of February. My financial results are in, and it's looking good.
Has revenue increased, Si? Has revenue increased for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few discrepancies of where some of that money's gone and what energy companies are stealing it, and profits from BP and Shell have got their words to say in it. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty rosy.
Si out. He's skimping out on the plates. Come on, Si.
But look, we've been waiting a long time for these results. They when should they have come out? Like 3 months ago, right?
November. Well, they don't have to come out on any particular date, but November the 23rd is traditionally the day that they have come out the last couple of years. So yeah, November the 22nd, I had an early night, and had my Stabilo Boss highlighter pen ready, the paper, the light was changed in my reading lamp, everything was good, and then there was nothing to do for 90 days. So,
well, they are out now, and it make for some interesting reading. I mean, me personally, I'm nowhere close to a financial guy, so this is going to be as educational for me as it is for the viewers out there. So, Sean, do you want to get us underway and just tell the viewers and tell me maybe what the financial results have read today?
Yeah, okay. So, look, a lot of people are going to be interested in the actual numbers, right? Like whether or not, and I've already seen some high-profile, blogs or whatever coming out and saying, look at these fantastic results, look at the jump in match day revenue and things. But in reality, it's a little bit silly to compare this set of figures with last season because of the consequences of COVID and the impact that it had. So the way that most people would do it, if you were in, I don't know, like in the stock market, if you were to have a guess as to whether or not, if Tottenham was still listed, whether they would go up or down on the basis of this results, it's not about the numbers, so to speak. It's the actual numbers relevant or relative to the estimated numbers. And the estimated numbers were released this time last year. And to be honest, the top line, i.e. revenue, how much money comes into the club, and the bottom line, which is earnings before interest and tax and depreciation and amortization, both of those are bang on the money. So Tottenham got exactly what they expected. Where it's really interesting to me, and I think the devil was in the details, is when you look at the actual specific line items of the main channels of money that are coming in, which is match day receipts, UEFA prize money, TV and media, and then commercial, other things, whether it's sponsorships or, e-commerce, selling sort of T-shirts, that sort of stuff. They got it wrong. They got it wrong in quite a big way. They actually underestimated how much money they were going to earn from commercial, from TV and media, and from UEFA prize money, to the tune of, like, for example, they said that on the commercial side that they thought they'd make 180 million. They made 184 million. TV and media, they thought they were going to make 140. They made 144. UEFA prize money, they thought they were going to make 8. Bearing in mind, obviously, we were in the Conference League on the year that this was being reflected on, and they made 10.2. But all of that was netted out. So they made more money than they thought they were going to in all of those divisions. But where they actually missed massively was they thought that the match day receipts was going to be 115 million. And match day receipts includes ticket prices, season ticket, all that stuff. But on top of that, anything you're selling in the stadium, excluding merchandise. So beers, burgers, all that kind of thing. And they thought they were going to make 115, and they only made 106. So it's a big swing, like a 10% or an 8-9% miss. And to me, I think that the takeaway from that particular point is, in summary, that there's something called elasticity of demand. I won't bore everybody with too much of the economic kind of narrative, but essentially, like if your costs are going up because of inflation or the price of energy or whatever, then you try to put your prices up so that you can equal out that and maintain your margins, maintain your profit margins. But at some point, if you raise your prices too high, then you don't get as much money in as you would have done, because some of the customers are not going to be willing to pay those additional costs. And I think that the major takeaway is that Tottenham, at some point in that season, pushed their prices up too high, and as a consequence, didn't get the money in. That the average Tottenham customer is feeling the pinch of their own cost of living expenses. And this was obviously a couple of years ago before the main crisis happened. So if you take that same narrative from then and you look forward to what's going to happen in next year's results, which reflects, this season or the season after, when the recession's going to get, tighter and stiffer, then I think that Daniel Levy and ENIC are probably going to see that and worry about whether or not they can make as much money relative to the cost of putting on the entertainment or whatever at Tottenham Hotspur from Tottenham fans. And so I think that what you're going to see is a hell of a lot more drive into, this isn't going to be surprising to anybody, but a massive amount of shift into areas where they can generate revenues that may not necessarily have to come from Tottenham fans directly. So things like, obviously, they'll prioritize top four over an FA Cup because it generates more money. They'll do more Beyonce concerts, and anywhere and anything they can think of that is going to generate more revenues where they can make more on the bottom line to make up for the cost of living crisis, which is actually hurting people at the top end. I think you're going to see more and more of that going forward.
Si, when you were reading the figures of the financial results, obviously there's the headline, which is 112 million increase in revenue. But does that tell the whole story when you're looking at how much money we actually have made? Because there's a lot of talk about Spurs are going to be making record profits in this one. We made as much money last season as we did in the season we got to the Champions League final. But does that really tell the whole story of the financial state last season?
I don't think massively, and I think Sean and I were talking earlier about this. I think the level of information really is fairly basic on this statement, and I think there's going to be a lot more questions than there are answers. And that's not to say everyone out there can understand hey, this isn't the full financial report, by the way. This is just a very skimmed over analysis that they put out there. But I think that this is where a lot of people will jump in to some conclusions, perhaps not realizing all the things in the background on this as well. And there are some elements, especially in finance, where whether you're self-employed or a business, that some of these finances can be carried over from X years beforehand, for whatever reason that might be. So I think it's relatively on par. I was expecting to be a bit higher, but then that could be a partial ignorance from my side, and maybe a lot of other people's sides as well, is that you're seeing all these things going on throughout the year, whether it be rugby matches, concerts, you name it, everything's going on. But we need to understand that, okay, that date that these are happening, what financial year would these actually be collated in? And we're not going to see all this Beyonce stuff, maybe not even in next year's format, but maybe the year after, who knows? It's all about balancing books and making sure that we're showing that we're sustainable, and that we have a progressive line of finances coming in and out. So I don't think it's concluded a full breakdown. I do think we get that, Sean, though. At some point, we usually get the full financial report that investors would get or have access to. But for me, at the moment, it's kind of I wouldn't say it's rushed, but as I said, it feels like there's more questions there on answers. And I think, again, there's something that we spoke about earlier on the WhatsApp group and stuff, was that from my perspective, maybe putting my marketing PR hat on, is that, yes, there are things that as fans, whether we like this or not, we are not supposed to know because we are just fans. This day and age of fans being part of the club and everything like this, the happy days, as it were, are kind of well gone. This is a commercial entity, it's a business entity. As fans, we feel so connected and emotional that we feel like we should know anything and everything that's going on and a full breakdown of this. And I think if we could find a way, and the Super League nonsense over the last few years has been an exact prime example of this, no communication with fans. And I think if we could find a way, or the club could find a way, to not necessarily have to break every intricate detail about his financial report, but just from a communicational tactic perspective of trying to integrate the fans a bit more again. And I'm not talking about Tottenham trusts and supporter groups and stuff like this. I'm talking about someone that can really be actually engaging with the fans and deliver some kind of strategy and format and thought process to what the hell is going on. But again, managing the expectation comment and thought is very much along the lines in my head that I've got a realism in my head to say that I want to know, and I feel like I have an owned right to know as a season ticket holder, as a paying fan, as paying money in shops or whatever it might be, that I demand these answers. But actually, in fact, the days of us being shareholders went probably nearly 20 years ago, when we all had like little shares and stuff, to the fact that we're just basically just numbers, really, that just contribute to these revenues at some point in some way. So yeah, I think there's a lot missing, but I do think there's a communication mismatch, and this is why we see so much divide. We see more arguments than we do positivity these days, and I think that could really be something that could be improved upon. Not just our club, loads of clubs do it. Southampton's a mess at the moment, Everton as well. Obviously, my local team, Portsmouth, are having issues with the owners and stuff, and it really, in my opinion, just comes down to communication and understanding what the hell is actually happening to our club.
The problem with that kind of the gap in communication, though, is when you're talking to the fans, you're talking to everybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes when things are sensitive, when there's confidential, things that are going on in the background, as much as everyone would love to know. This is why I had some of the problems with the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust. The questions I thought were poorly framed, like demanding answers to naming rights updates and things. That's just naive on their part to think that Tottenham are ever going to announce that unnecessarily to a fan base to appease us, when they're also giving away. If they were to do that, they'd be giving away the game to everybody else that's looking in, and also, confidential information, which is part of negotiations. What I would say, guys, is that there is definitely some takeaways from this. And I 100% agree with Simon about like it's a gloss over, and they're definitely focusing on like the stuff that's coming in. There's a lot if you look into it, what they're not saying, but you can figure out from just looking at the numbers. There's a lot that they're not telling you, which actually is quite palpable. For example. The amount of revenue we brought in this time versus last time, and what that's done as an estimated margin. So the margins are coming down, right? The margins are being squeezed because they can't raise the prices or raise the ability to generate revenue at the same level as they can as the costs are going up. But on top of that, you can do some simple maths and figure out that we had £70 million more costs in the last year than we did in the year before. That wasn't necessarily equated out or equaled out by the ability to bring in those match day revenues. On top of that, like if you finish the period and you write down depreciation and amortization to the point where you've lost £50 million over the year, and I think that he goes into some of this stuff in the chairman's statement. He does go in a little bit further into explaining the crisis, I guess, in terms not crisis is the wrong word. The fallout of poor selection of players, the amount of money we have spent on bad players that are out on loan. I've heard the figure, it's 250 million quid or something of player purchases out on loan. We are clearly not getting their salaries entirely paid for. We are clearly not making any significant money back on loan fees. And so the amortization of those expenses is hurting our top and our bottom line. Whether Paratici's had long enough to prove his worth or not, but one of the major problems at Tottenham Hotspur, and again, it doesn't take a genius to say this, but the statement makes it even more clearer than it was prior, is that if we want to be able to compete and if we want to be able to live a sustainable model, but also close that gap on the guys above us, then we need to be so much more effective and efficient in our spend with regards player tradings, because right now we're seeing the impact of failure of procurement year in, year out. And even though Ndombele was a 4-year ago purchase, and Lo Celso and Reguilon, all of those things, we kind of forget about those players, but they are still hurting us financially and still hurting our bottom line to the point where it makes it difficult for us to have the ability to go out and compete with teams and with owners that don't seem to worry about the sustainability model.
Yeah, let me read that portion of Daniel Levy's statement following the release of the financial records. He says, our spend levels show we have invested in the team. However, we walk a fine line between long-term investment and short-termism. This is why our recruitment must be first class, as mistakes at this level have a financial and sporting impact for future seasons. We have felt and continue to feel the financial impact of supporting player purchases which have not worked out as planned. We have taken steps to improve this area of operations, and We believe the recent transfer windows reflect this. Now, I read that and it kind of seems as though Levy is saying, first of all, it's very similar to what he said to the trust anyway, not so long ago, but it seems as though he's not like relinquishing. He is taking a bit of the blame, but he's kind of saying, look, we've bought these players and they've turned out to be bad. But it does kind of worry me like that. I don't know if he realizes the role he has played in these players failing as badly as they have, because he spent 100 million, as you say, on Ndombele and Celso. Those are probably the two biggest examples of this. But they spent 100 million on two players for a manager in Pochettino, a very specific way of playing, a very specific system. And you bring him in, and then you sack that manager 10 games into a season. You spent 100 million on that for players for that manager. You then sack that manager who plays a very specific, high pressing, possession based system for a completely different style of play, a completely different manager who relies on defending and transitions, things like that. And maybe these players aren't as suited to that, and it's contributed to these players not settling, not kind of finding their way in the team. These were top talents when we did sign them. And do you not think maybe, I don't know if he should acknowledge, but maybe does he have more to blame than maybe he's letting on? I guess I'll go with Sai as to why it's not just a simple fact as he's bought bad players. I think he needs to take responsibility for why they've turned out bad.
Yeah, there's always this fun thing with Daniel, like I've seen it many times with all these PR announcements that come out over the years, and it's always been shafting the blame somewhere else, or maybe like a sly apology or a sly blaming to himself, but never actually directly saying these things. It's very good way of I don't know if he's got someone in the PR department working for him, but they do quite a good job of that.
Of course he does.
I think. Yeah, of course. And I think more and more fans are becoming awake to this with everything that goes on in social media and stuff like that. We're not really falling for that anymore. And I think with the week or the 2 weeks before, where the Tottenham Trust had their statement responded to, it was almost farcical, really. And it actually drove me a bit mad in the sense that it had a bit of an aggressive tone. And it wasn't kind of like addressing us as fans anymore. It was kind of addressing us as like peasants, and we shouldn't be asking these questions. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's, as I said earlier, I think there's a big mismatch between club and fan, and I don't think anyone really is avoiding the fact now that there needs to be blame in that hierarchy level, and it is, I guess, if you want to call it any form of positivity, is that they are acknowledging finally that there have been mistakes over this period of time, but the responsibility comes to the people who hires these people in the first place and signs off on all these things as well. But also the strategy overall as a club, and we pointed out about Brighton and everything earlier about how fantastically well they are. It's not just about player recruitment, it's the whole entire infrastructure. And I think Pochettino was extremely good at almost like that Arsene Wenger feel to it, where you're not just the coach and the manager, you have a massive influence across the entire club. And we could see that everything was changing. Everyone was proud to work for Tottenham, and everyone was proud to be a fan, and it was really like tight knit. And we've lost a bit of that over time. But I think in that transitional period of not backing Pochettino, we must remember that there was a new stadium. We must remember that there was a pandemic in the middle of all this. And every other club is in exactly the same position, albeit that not any club in the world, I don't think, spent about £1 billion, whether that was loaned or not, in that period of time as well. So there's probably a bit of element of bricking it a bit, going, well, how long is this going to last? Or like, how are we going to afford this? And in some context, from a business perspective, these guys are incredible at what they do. There's no doubt about it. But this now needs to transition into a positive mentality of like, how do we perform as a team? How do we perform as a football club? But I honestly have a worry that the football element and the team element and fan element is reducing itself in the list of order. And that's not how football was originally brought into fruition. And it's certainly something that's evolved over time, where money has taken over, business has taken over. And we're seeing our comparisons with the likes of Man City, Chelsea, who have owners that can just literally blitz as much money as they want and not even worry about it, irrespective of fair play and the adjustments in the last convenient adjustments, by the way, in the last month. And there's that. So it's like social media in general, isn't it? There's a pressure, but there's now a pressure on our fans as well, collectively, for us to be like, well, they're doing it. Why can't we doing it? We're doing all these concerts. We're doing this. We're doing that. Why? Where's this money going? Why is it not coming into the team? Why are we getting crap players or not recruiting properly? But then your exact point, Sim, is that when you channel it upwards, the grassroots point, it goes to that hierarchy. Who's making the hiring decisions across the board? There is only one man in my head that does that. And that's the argument I've always had for many, many years now. But as I said, they're admitting partially, hidden, slyly, their mistakes. But I want to know as a fan, essentially a partial stakeholder in that sense, that I do spend a lot of money with them, whether it's through tickets or whatever, to have an explanation as to what the hell's going on in the club that we've supported all our lives pretty much and spend a lot of money on. And I think that
it's not just that side, though, isn't it? Because he's talking about in that statement, he's apologising for specific or, transfer mistakes. But where's the culpability for chopping and changing philosophies, not having a plan, taking 75 days to hire a manager?
Exactly.
You're going to keep making transfer mistakes if you don't have a plan. What's the plan if Antonio Conte leaves at the end of the season?
And that's exactly right. He spent half the summer going after a play in Jed Spence, who the manager didn't want. So how can he then go ahead and say we're improving our recruitment?
We are,
and all this?
we are improving.
He can say it. But how can he go on one saying we're trying to improve the recruitment from before, and then he's again literally just this summer he spent a few months trying to sign a player who then the manager doesn't want. So how can he say that?
But I think that
I don't think you can. Oh, sorry, Ben. Sorry, mate.
No, go on, Sean. Whatever, go on, Ben.
I was going to say, for the most part, since Paratici has come in, I think the signings have been good. I think you've got to say that. So I think that since that shift has happened, since he's brought in Paratici, the signings have been a lot better and more for the purpose that we're playing with Antonio Conte 3 at the back, wing-back system. It's been fine. It's been really good. I've been happy with the signings that have come in for the most part. But if Conte walks in the summer and they're going to bring in someone else that's a completely different philosophy, then what? Then we're back to square one again. So we need to get the planning and the philosophy and the way we want to go as a football club spot on. And Daniel Levy is the one that needs to take the main culpability for that situation, for the lack of planning at this football club time and time again. But sorry, Sean, to cut you off.
No, listen, I hear what you're saying. I hear what everyone's saying. Right? I take all of your points on board, and I agree to a large extent with what you're saying. If the purpose of this report was to have an audit of Daniel Levy, like a Q&A of Daniel Levy, then maybe he should have gone a little bit further in, acknowledging some of the things he's done well, and then also give himself the chance to promote the things that he's done right. But this isn't an audit of Daniel Levy. This is an audit of the finances of the football club. And in a financial statement, like if you're an employee and you get of any company and your boss wants to, go through your review on the year, you're not going to sit there and hold your hands up unnecessarily and agree with every criticism that is thrown at you. And I think that, like I say, for me personally, I think there's so many things that you can look at, like another year, no dividends being paid. Like that same accusation or that same greed accusation can't be thrown at Daniel Levy that is thrown at people like the Glazers, who take so much money out every year. They take out more money every year in dividends over the last 20 years than they even put in at the start of their tenure. So I think that there needs to be a little bit of, of understanding that I think they're going some way to acknowledge that they're making mistakes, that they're obviously also going to have their own back, because when they're accused of things all the time by unhappy and frustrated fans that sometimes are unreasonable with their own reflections or don't necessarily understand the intricacies of what running a business or running a Tottenham Hotspur football club is like, I don't think you're ever going to see someone go, you know what, you're right, everything that's thrown at me, that I'm accused of, you're absolutely right. I don't think that he was ever going to do that or say that. What I do think you can take away from this is that there is an acknowledgement that there's been mistakes, that they're trying their best to do it. They're trying to do it in the right way. And they keep pushing this narrative that the rules around financial sustainability are tightening, and that is a good thing. And if you think back to when Arsenal, our biggest rivals, built their new stadium, it took them 8-9 years before they won a trophy again. We're 3 years into that process in the face of all the other things that are happening that are variables outside of Tottenham or Daniel Levy's control, like the pandemic.
We were
like
winning
inflation, like...
trophies before the stadium, though.
No, okay, I know, but what I'm saying is that they're like, but Arsenal always were, and then they weren't for 8 years after building a new stadium, right? So there's a big impact there, and Tottenham are going through that process. And I think that if you take a step back and you analyze the situation where we're at, what we're dealing with in terms of internal things and external things, I think that we're doing pretty well. And if we hope that things are moving in the right direction for Tottenham financially, and also that things are moving in towards us in regards the ability for our competition to do and get away with what they've been doing, which is the next part of that chairman's statement where he talks about sustainability rules. Then I think and I know it's a hard ask for people that have already made their mind up, that don't care about the intricacies, that care about the bottom line, which is that we haven't won enough trophies. I think that if you give it a little bit more time, if you have a little bit more patience and see that we are moving in the right direction and other things are moving back towards us that suits us, then by maybe the 24-25, by the 25-26 season, everything could be rosy at Tottenham Hotspur. And what I'm asking fans to do, if they are willing to, is have a little bit more patience, but at the same time, 100% hold Daniel Levy accountable for the mistakes that he's been making and recognize that he's trying to move in that direction, and whether Paratici is the right guy to now, like Ben, I know you're someone that's more ENIC out. You said that under Paratici, we've been pretty good with our transfers so far on balance. So
the personnel that has come in, but not the volume.
Yeah, okay. But if we're continuing to move in the right direction, and then other teams that have been able to get around the rules because the rules weren't tight enough, then everything can move everything can come back to a point where we can compete on fair, level playing field. And I think Daniel Levy's not a bad guy to have in charge under a new era of football that might emerge in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, what Levy has said as well in his statement, I'll just read it out. It says, the landscape of the Premier League has changed significantly in the last decade. It is understandable that some fans call for more spending, much of which is unsustainable for many clubs. We are competing in a league in which we have seen increased sovereign wealth ownership and consortia finance, and in a league where the spending power is now vested in the hands of a few who dominate and have the ability to distort the market. We welcome the changes to the governance of the game, which will compel greater financial sustainability and FFP. Major changes have been introduced in Europe and around FFP regulations, including the newly launched UEFA financial sustainability rules, the full impact of which will only be felt in 25-26 season. They are based on 3 pillars: solvency, stability, and cost of control, and clubs will have 3 seasons to adjust to them. Many expect the new rules will be a game changer for the sport and even tighter regulations to follow. Now, reading that side, listening to that, do you think maybe fans should have a bit more patience, or is it right after 22 years that patience has run out already and it's now or never?
You're always trying to have a balanced mindset on all of this. I have been an advocate for the Levy out or a change movement, to be honest, for various reasons. And I think with this kind of new sustainability level coming in, there is a partial argument whether this is right or wrong, and I'm sure everyone has their opinions, is that if we are working towards this sustainability goal, not talking about green energy, we're talking about financial sustainability, there is an argument to say that, well, actually, when that time comes and it's switched on, how many other clubs will actually be in the right format for this? And I know they've given 2-3 years or whatever for people or clubs to sort themselves out, and whether that's enough time or not will remain to be seen. How many of these clubs that have spent substantial amounts of money will not be able to operate or sustain themselves moving forward? And will we have enough commercial income or revenue generation in general to pay for the things that we really want to? Now, I'm not expecting us to pay the stadium off in a couple of years, but certainly we could be in a stronger position in the sense that we've got extra avenues of money coming in. That's not to say that we have been, as fans, extremely patient, right? With or without the new stadium, it has been arguably a massive underperformance. Sky Sports and all this always talk about it constantly. Every fan talks about it constantly, especially other clubs' fans. the fact of the matter is, one trophy in 22 years is unacceptable for a club. Whether we're right to say this or not, a club of our stature should be winning and exceed, having more achievements than what we have had. Yes, there are difficulties, that there are billionaire owners out there, more billions than we supposedly have with Joe Lewis, that are be able to chuck that money in. Will these changes over the next 2-3 years stop that mentality from occurring and have more reliance on academy, more reliance on extra revenue streams, being more of a unified financial infrastructure across the board of each of these clubs? Will remain to be seen. But like for me, as I said, I try to be balanced. There's so much. I think a lot of my anger has disappeared now, just from not necessarily giving up, but the fact like I've managed my own expectations of Tottenham over the last few years, right? Irrespective of the macro events around the world that have occurred, that energy and pandemics and stuff like that. For me, I've not given up, but I'm in the expectation to not expect anything, because that is Tottenham to me for the last 20 odd years. I need to see something substantially change, whether that's hierarchy format, recruitment format, philosophy change, like Ben just said, for me to to swing around to any form of proper positivity. And I am also in the camp of Sean's mentality that he's mentioned about, if we can transition properly to this sustainable format, the next couple of years that will come, then I might change my opinion as that happens. But I'm not going to sit here right now and just go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to give them another 2 years, 5. They've already had 20 odd years, right? And I believe in second chances, sometimes even third and fourth chances. But I guess like the proof is in the pudding, as they say. I would rather see the evidence of this accumulating first before I was to change my mind to say that, oh, I feel really happy about how things are going, and I think Daniel Levy is the right guy. And you have to understand the majority of fans feel that way.
I 100% agree with what you're saying, mate. And I feel like maybe this last couple of weeks, with everything that's happening with regards to the FFP, with Manchester City, with Juventus, and all that stuff, plus this set of figures, I feel like these conversations are really helpful for people that are still open-minded. I feel like there is maybe a slight merging of opinions. Like I'm certainly more willing to lean my head into what other people have been saying for a long time, and I'm hearing and feeling that other people are starting to kind of lean back a little bit, to the point where there's a bit more of a middle ground that's opening up. And I think that's a good thing for the fan base, to be aware of both sides of the story, want better, demand more, but at the same time tolerate a little bit of what is going on in the face of what's coming and what has been going on in the past that has proven, or will probably be proven, to have been dishonest from some of our competition.
I think that to mention that point, Sean, as well, is exactly what I said earlier. Is that I think there is a massive piece of the puzzle missing between club and fans right now. There's too much divide in the fan base. In the stadium, 1 minute it's ENIC out, then it's ENIC in, or depending on performance, and there's protests and everything that's going on. And I'm up for any of all of that, because everyone has an opinion and a thought process. But I think there's so much divide, so much anger, majority of the time, that the club needs to find a solution to bridge the fans back to the club again. We used to have all these wonderful like membership packs and stuff like that, and most of that stopped now. And I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm saying that there needs to be some intricate detail on how they present their information. Don't get agitated with your press releases to the Tottenham Trust or fans, because that's just going to pretty much annoy us even more. Come out with a conclusive strategy, talk to us about it as fans, and then we can manage our own expectations a bit better, rather than getting agitated, sitting there, getting annoyed on social media, on news channels and stuff like this about it all. That's one thing that I think that's lacking in football in general. As I said, the Super League was a prime example of that, of what the massive disjointment of what fans think and expect compared to what a club thinks and wants to do. But they need to understand that these stadiums are filled with fans, paying fans, and also have a wider fan base. And I think there needs to be a massive overhaul of communication, engagement, and the thinking process of how they talk and react with fans. Because without that, we're just going to have continuous divide, anger. Divide in fan groups should not really be happening, to be honest. We should all be there in the stadium hopefully Harry is happy as Larry and enjoying what's in front of us. But there's so much going on in the hierarchy, so much nonsense for the last 20 years. Everyone's sick and tired of it. And for the last year or so, it's been more prominent than ever, this Enoch out chance, or just the philosophy of not even being an Enoch out, but actually now seeing and hearing grumbles and interaction from people that are not happy. And that needs to stop. And I'm not even blaming the fans for that. That comes from the hierarchy. It's their fault. They've created this mess and this disjointment, and they need to fix it with better, announcements and stuff than they have been doing, in my opinion. The fans deserve more, for sure. And we need to see that.
Absolutely. But Sean, Si, it's been an absolute pleasure getting your views on these financial results. Apparently, what I'm hearing is that the full report is now on the website. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
Oh, is it? I haven't seen
Apparently.
the full report, no. Okay.
That's what a few people are saying in the comments. So maybe we can have a follow-up when...
In half an hour.
we'll give you a couple of days, Sean. We'll give you a couple of days. But no. Thanks for coming on today. And quickly, before you go, give us a score prediction for the Leicester game.
I'm going to go, 3-2 or 4-2. I liked what you were saying, Ben. I think it's going to be an absolute helter-skelter game. It always is up there, isn't it? So looking forward to seeing it with you, mate. I'll see you tomorrow morning at your place.
Looking forward to it, mate.
I'm going 4-1, guys, and I'm expecting a Harry Kane hat-trick because he loves Leicester.
All right, loving it, loving the positivity, guys. We got to move on, but thank you very much for coming on and going through that with us. And we'll see you very soon.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Nice one, guys.